Hey everybody, this is John for MTG Nexus doing a quick deck tech on the build of Boros Burn we're going to be doing against this versus matchup with Eldrazi Tron. Requested matchup last week among many people, especially on Facebook. Matchup people wanted to see, along with our latest version of the build that we use to combat Hogak right now. The main thing right now is we're back up to 20 lands. No Grim Lavamancer in the main anymore. Other than that, it's pretty much a clean 4 of across the entire deck. 4 Goblin Guide, 4 Swift Spear, 4 copies of Searing Blaze, 4 copies of Lightning Helix, which I think are important to offset the copies of Sunbed Canyon. The relevant cards on the sideboard, which we'll get into a little bit more later, but Path to Exile, Smash to Smithereens, and Skullcrack are important against various aspects of Eldrazi Tron. And as always, if you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving us a thumbs up, leaving a constructive comment down below. And with that, we'll get into the deck tech on the Eldrazi Tron matchup that we will be facing. Hey, we're back for the deck tech for Eldrazi Tron. This is a deck that existed during the summer of Death Shadow a couple years ago, kind of faded off into the distance as the format moved away from Death Shadow, and one of the big reasons it was good in the Death Shadow meta was the sheer amount of 1-drops in the format, the bringing back of the London Mulligan rule severely benefits a deck that is basically conditional on two things. The main versions of the deck are built around the idea of either having Chalice of the Void on turn 1, or Chalice of the Void on 1 on turn 2, or hands that are very conditional on Eldrazi Temple to be able to accelerate your Matter Shapers, your Thought-Knot Seers, your Reality Smashers, etc. into play more quickly. This deck also has the backdoor plan of assembling Tron, but it does not is successful as Mono Green Tron, as it just has 4 copies of each land and then 4 copies of Expedition Map, without really a whole lot of other ways to search for it. So this is definitely more of an Eldrazi Temple and Chalice of the Void deck than a assemble Tron and blow you out with big mana things. A couple of new things to add to the deck since its last iterations, when it was good 2 years ago, was Karn the Great Creator and the sideboard package that enables, as well as some lists run Ugin the Ineffable in this like Endbringer slot. I chose to run the version with Endbringer against this matchup, as Endbringer is a little bit more relevant in a timely fashion against something like Burn. If you're getting to the point where you're casting a 6-mana Planeswalker against Burn, and the game's not already out of hand, or already not out of hand for Burn or for your deck, seems like a win more card. So I want to play against something that was a little more relevant. They can often drop Endbringer on turn 4 with a couple copies of Eldrazi Temple, or a Mind Stone in Eldrazi Temple, so it's not unheard of for Endbringer to be relevant. Another key card, All Is Dust, allows them to wipe the board in a lot of matchups, so this kind of serves as their copy of Ugin, the big mana Ugin that the Mono Green Tron decks would run. And then the really interaction outside of things like Walking Ballista is Dismember, which obviously against a deck like Burn is painful, but sometimes dismembering a 1-drop can save you 4 or 6 life anyway, or hitting something like Eidolon if you have a hand with like a bunch of Matter Shapers and Expedition Maps and stuff can be relevant. But beyond that, it's kind of what the deck's built around. Cast things like Matter Shaper, Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher a little bit ahead of the curve, and then finally has the Karn the Great Creator package, which really only has 2 relevant things. Big thing right now for the Eldrazi Tron deck is it's having to run 4 copies of Leyline of the Void because of Hogak, and has Spatial Contortions as additional removal spells. Beyond that, the main cards that they can bring in against us are Basilisk Collar and Liquid Metal Coating. And Snaring Bridge potentially, but they're generally trying to close out the game by attacking us rather than preventing us from attacking them. Basilisk Color is the biggest thing, especially if they don't have a Chalice of 1 on play. They can, suit up a Thought-Knot Seer or Reality Smasher, get in for 4 damage, start swinging the life gain the other way. They can get Walking Ballista in a pinch, but usually that's not really what they're after. And then something like Mycosynth the Last to shut down mana, but oftentimes the game's already kind of been decided by either their board presence or by us having a bunch of burn spells in hand. So Mycosynth the Last is more for kind of the mid-range matchups, but their Karn is relevant. It allows them to go get specifically Basilisk Color to help swing the race in terms of life gain. And beyond that, kind of why the deck is so difficult for Burn is the fast Chalice draws and the fast Thought-Knot Seer, like on turn 2 or turn 3, can be quite relevant, especially when they're on the play. So this matchup, at least for the regular version of Burn, is very play-draw dependent. I think the paradigm shifts a little bit once you introduce something like Deflecting Palm into the matchup, but I think we're going to do a separate video with the 3 matches we played with the Deflecting Palm version of Burn. And with that, let's get into the matches against the regular version of Boros Burn. Hey everybody, this is John for MTG Nexus, starting our replays with Eldrazi Tron versus Burn. From the Burn perspective, as this is primarily a Burn channel. Taking a look at our opening hand in match number 1, game number 1 of the normal version of Burn. This hand's pretty solid. We're on the draw, which kind of sucks, but overall this hand's pretty solid. 1-drop into Eidolon, Searing Blaze, Lava Spike. In most matchups, I have no problems keeping this kind of a hand. Sadly, the opponent's on the play. They lead on Temple and Expedition map. We get some Swift Spear action here. Opponent going to drop a Chalice on 1. Kind of relevant as we have a couple 1-drops in our hand that are now effectively dead. It's one of Eldrazi Tron's best tools against us. Opponent grabs another Eldrazi Temple. Get to get in for some damage here. Did miss an opportunity at a point of damage here potentially, but as our opponent hit the Swift Spear with the Dismember, I find it interesting that they hit Dismember on Swift Spear rather than Eidolon, but I suppose they have some way to neutralize Eidolon right now. They play Engbringer. We are unable to use Searing Blaze to any great effect here. Opponent plays All Is Dust. Start swinging in. We crack the land, try to find something. Opponent continues to pressure us here. They play Walking Ballista. And we have to scoop it up because our Searing Blazes can't be triggered with landfall, and we have all this other stuff we can't cast. We'll be back in a bit with game number 2. Back for game number 2, we're on the play, which obviously is a huge thing in this matchup. This hand is reasonable. We want to prioritize getting the 1-mana spells out of our hand in case they have Chalice again. I end up keeping this hand even though it's obviously not the best. I suspend Riftbolt primarily because most builds of Eldrazi Tron are not capable of Chalice on 1 unless they show Gemstone Cavern. Response to this, we go ahead and bolt our opponent down to 11. Got our land, opponent has a Thought-Knot Seer. Boros Charm in response, they take the Skull Crack. They crack the map, grab the 3rd Eldrazi Temple. Opponent's starting to pressure us. Grab that, we Boros Charm them on unstep. Opponent plays another Matter Reshaper, gets in for a bunch of damage here. We fetch this in the deck and then draw another Boros Charm. Nothing too substantial here. Obviously, the difference of play versus draw, this Chalice would have locked out more spells on the play. You know, in this pressure, they're usually a turn 5, turn 6 deck. So Eldrazi Tron can pressure quite quickly if they have the Eldrazi Temple draw, which sometimes their deck doesn't come together. And with that said, we'll be back with game number 3. So we're back for game number 3 in match number 1. This hand's pretty solid. A little bit risky with a 1-lander on the draw. I do believe we end up keeping this hand. We have the 2 1-drops plus the Path to Exile to pressure them. Smash if we find a second land, so even if they Chalice us, we go ahead and drop an Expedition map. Which means their hand's probably a little light on... There's the Chalice that we didn't want to see. Fortunately, we draw the second land and have Smash for EOT. Here comes a turn 3 Thought-Knot, which this is one of their better draws, obviously. Go ahead and do that. They grab Path to Exile. We play triple Swift Spear, which may not have been correct here. Might have been correct to hold up Skewer the Critics to be able to kill Thought-Knot here. Opponent cracks map, grabs that. Play out a Matter Reshaper, hold back on defense. We decide not to attack because we kind of need to buy time at this point. They play Mind Stone. play Karn. Go and grab Basilisk Color, which obviously is a problem. Go and Boros Burn them here. Opponent plays Basilisk Color, goes ahead and attacks with their... Play Boros Charm. We could have played that as Indestructible. That might have been actually better here. But opponent's going to go back to 7. Transfer the Basilisk Color. Play Swift Spear. Once again, do the thing. It's possible. I Lightning Helix here to prevent the life gain. Maybe that's not the correct thing. Then our opponent displays an Endbringer and really have no good attacks. They have Blast Zone. They don't use because they happen to have Ola's Dust. It starts to bash in, gain some life. We have a 1-drop, but then just concede because we're basically dead here. One thing this hugely illustrates is Chalice of the Void, obviously a very critical card in the matchup, but much more effective on the play than on the draw. So play draw is very dependent on this matchup. This matchup is, I'd say Eldrazi Tron's favored, but I think it is very play draw dependent, and it is kind of a close matchup. Especially, was talking with some of the guys on the Burn Discord, and a lot of them have been talking about the video by Magic AIDS YouTube channel that happened to play a Burn video with Deflecting Palm in the main. So I kind of decided that even though I don't particularly care for the card Deflecting Palm, that I would do kind of a split set of videos today. The first 3 matches are with like the traditional Burn list that I've been running. The second list I shaved a couple of Searing Blazes for Deflecting Palms in the main. And it actually seemed to make quite a bit of difference in the matchup, but we'll get to that when we get to those matches. But that's it for match number 1 of the regular variety. We are here for match number 2, game number 1. We're looking at a no-lander, so this is a pretty easy mulligan, and we are on the draw, which kind of sucks. Keep this hand, put back 1. We have 2 lands here, which is obviously pretty ideal. Go ahead and get the Goblin Guide out, because that's the card. The chance to do the most damage if they happen to have Chalice here, which they do. Card is an extreme annoyance. Now, skewer the critics, skewer the critics. Opponent plays a Walking Ballista for 1. We Searing Blaze it to get out of the way. Go and skewer them, put them to 2 here. Opponent gets to deploy a Thought-Knot Seer. We can't attack right now. Opponent plays Karn. Goes and grabs Basilisk Color, which I think is a mistake in the face of this Chalice here. I believe this mistake was made once or twice else in the testing. Basilisk Color is like the primary thing for most of the Karn lists to get against Burn if they don't have something like Orbs of Warding or what is the other one? There's Orbs of Warding, and then there's Witchbane Orb. I believe if that's not, happens to be in the sideboard, which probably isn't given the fact that most of these E-Tron lists are running for Leyline in the Void because of Hogak. So, we were able to steal game 1 on the play. Let's see if we can convert that into a match and a win, shall we? We are back for game number 2 of match number 2. Stands pretty solid. A little bit of vulnerability to Chalice on 1, but I think overall the hand has enough upside that if they don't have Chalice on 1, we're going to be able to do a lot of damage to them. Just to show Karn the Great Creator off of the first thing there. Of course, they have the Chalice on 1s. This hand got a lot worse. Goblin Guy doing the thing, but still gives them an Eldrazi Temple, which is problematic. A TKS us, take the Path to Exile that's threatening if we happen to find an answer to their... Take the Lava Spike, kill our guy, Spatial Contortion. We get some redraws here, but we're obviously way behind the 8-ball with that much pressure in play, kind of spinning our tires, and just concede here. Don't want to show them Smash to Smithereens, although I suspect They know that we have some type of artifact heat in our sideboard. Skewer the Critics, obviously, could have done them 6 damage this turn, but them being at 13, there's no way we can kill them before they can untap and kill us, so no need to show them extra information, so we go ahead and scoop it up. We'll be back for the third and deciding game in this set, game number 3 of match number 2. So we're back for our game number 3 of the second match of the normal variant of Burn. This hand's pretty solid. We have Goblin Guy plus Swiftspear, we have a Smash to Smithereens, Path to Exile here to clear out a guy, Smash if they happen to Chalice, Lightning Helix is another solid follow-up spell. The only downside is the Sunbed Canyon's obviously dealing us a lot of damage. Opponent gets a Tron land off of Lead on Expedition map. Don't get to have a really mana-efficient turn. Let's show them Eldrazi Temple. Opponent goes Eldrazi Temple into Matter Reshaper. We get Swiftspear. Go ahead and see another Tron land. We path their dude. Get in for a bunch of damage here. Opponent then plays Blast Zone. We move to combat. Slight mistake by our opponent here. They should have done this main phase in case of Boros Charm, but we don't have the draw there to punish it. Play play out the Goblin Guide as a defensive creature here. Chalice on 1. Into Thought-Knot Seer. So we can't cast 1-drop spells. Opponent gets to play Endbringer, so they're starting to tighten the noose. Do that to buy a little bit more time. Start using our redraws. We get a Rift Bolt. Suspend the Rift Bolt. Opponent goes. And that is one heck of a swing there. And they get to untap and kill us before we can Rift Bolt them, because of Endbringer's untap ability. So, Endbringer is not in all of the builds I looked at to test against. There were basically the same 2 slots were either taken up by either 2 Endbringers or 2 Ugin the Ineffable. The list I chose to test against was Endbringer because it's a little bit more relevant in the matchup. Ugin is more of a card advantage card, slash 6 mana Vindicate. So I chose to test against the Endbringer variant because that's a card that has the potential to come down faster with Eldrazi Temple. They don't necessarily have to have Tron or hit 6 lands in order to cast it, so figured this would be a little bit tougher on the Burn matchup to have a creature that doesn't need combat, is card advantage in certain situations, and can make other creatures not able to attack. So that is why I went with the Endbringer variants. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of differences in a lot of these lists. A lot of them are playing 4 Karn the Great Creator, 4 Leyline on the board and the sideboard, so a lot of the lists are kind of homogenized, and a lot of the rest of the key cards are like 4-ofs, other than, say like there's a walking list on the sideboard and some for the Karns, but most of the Chalices, Dismember, some number of Dismembers, some number of All as Dusts, some number of Thought-Knot Seers, Reality Smashers, Matter Reshapers, kind of all 4-ofs. So, deck can be a little bit clunky sometimes, especially on the draw, but as you see there, they find the Chalice at the key time, plus they can close the game really, really fast with Reality Smashers and Endbringers and such. So, kind of leads to believe that something like Deflecting Palm can obviously have a huge impact if your opponent's just going to smash in with Smasher. Notably, Deflecting Palm doesn't target Reality Smasher, so card that a lot of people were advocating in the main deck against things like Hogak, E-Tron, Humans, etc. So it is a card that you will see in testing after the last match, which will be the last match of regular Boros Burn versus Eldrazi Tron. Okay, we're back for our match number 3, game number 1, with the regular build of Boros Burn here. Pretty easy mulligan. No landers. Those are always easy mulligans. This hand's pretty solid. I think the put back here is either Blaze or Eidolon. Don't remember which one I put back. I guess it was Blaze. Guess that makes some amount of sense. Go ahead and get rolling here. Start pressuring our opponent. There's some argument for Swiftspear Lava Spike, especially if they have Chalice. Well, it goes ahead and does a 6 damage Dismember on the Eidolon. then there's the Chalice we were kind of afraid of. Do that to kind of get the extra pump on it. So spend a Rift Bolt. Up to 5 here. Play a Ballista on one. So looks like they had the draw where didn't quite come together for them. They're missing on mana. There's a Thought Knot Seer. They play another Thought Knot Seer. Looks like they're starting to turn the corner here. Chump blocked by a little more time. And we find a Boros Charm to kind of finish them off. So obviously, as I mentioned a couple of times in the earlier parts of the video, being on the play is exceptionally important in this build, because a lot of these, unless they have specifically gemstone caverns in their build, they often can't chalice on one until turn 2. So if you're able to deploy multiple spells, empty your hand of 1-drops, and you don't have very efficient ways to get 1-drops off the board. Usually the removal in the main deck is either Dismember or things like Warping Wail or Spatial Contortion, so they don't really have any real efficient ways to get 1-drops off the board. So once again, your 1-drop creatures, especially on the play, are very key in the matchup. Back for game number 2 here in the match. In this hand's solid, reasonable, doesn't really have any vulnerabilities to specifically Chalice, but it is a bunch of 2-drops, and then Screw the Critics on its own, which is a 3-drop. So I think we end up keeping this, but it is a little bit risky, especially when they go turn 1 Eldrazi. We play Eidolon here. They crack it, grab another Eldrazi Temple. So they could Reality Smasher us here. Looks like they're going to play Thought Knot Seer instead. Take our Searing Blaze, which is interesting. Play an Eidolon. Attacking with both. Opponent gets rid of the Eidolon. Go ahead and skewer the Critics, draw a card. Hold on to that skewer for the next turn. They have a Walking Ballista for 2. Finish it off our Swift Spear there while we're tapped out. For about them, it's just about staying alive. They drop a Chalice. They drop another Ballista. We draw a bunch of uncastables here. They play Endbringer, start closing out the game. We have Lightning Helix, which could be important. Chalice on 2, obviously closing out our outs as quickly as possible. They draw a card. Play Reality Smasher, and that's just the game. So one of the things about this deck is once they get up to their mana threshold, Reality Smashers, Endbringers, Walking Ballistas can all close the game out very, very quickly, especially when we're locked out by Chalice on 1 and Chalice on 2. Once again, Chalice can play an important role even later in the game, kind of denying some of us our selection of some of our top decks, kind of try and close out the game. We'll be back in a bit here with game number 3 of match number 3. So we will be on the play here for game number 3. First hand, pretty easy mulligan. This hand's solid, although once again kind of suffers from the lack of a 1-drop problem. I think this hand's a keep. I think we end up pitching back probably the Sacred Foundry here. I end up pitching one of the Eidolons. Interesting. Not sure if I agree with that decision, though we immediately draw another land, kind of punishes us for our sequencing here. They have another Chalice, they take 2 to cast it. Going for some damage here. Play that, hold up Lightning Helix, they have Reality Smasher. They start racing, which is curious. Especially with protection from looks like they have Tron here. Karn go grabs Basilisk Color, which this is a Nombo here. It's countered by their own Chalice. I think their original goal was to go get Basilisk Color and race us, which obviously that 5-point life swing would have been very critical in this situation. Would have kind of validated their decision with Reality Smasher and such. Did look like they got caught up between two different ideas for the strategy, and I guess they decided that this Reality Smasher was worth Not trying to trade in combat with this and a burn spell. Trading a 3 for 1, keeping your life total a little bit higher seems more reasonable to me. But, looks like they got caught up and they made a little bit of a mistake here, and we were kind of able to capitalize by, once again, Sunbake Canyon. There have been some times in this league, or these matchups, where we've only had multiple Sunbake Canyons, and obviously taking a lot of damage hurts casting your spells. But there's also been a lot of spaces where, getting a redraw, finding, a Boros Charm instead of this Lightning Helix, enabling us to close out the game was very important. So I'll be back here in a second with a wrap up with the normal version of Boros Burn versus Eldrazi Tron. So we're here wrapping up the normal version of Eldrazi Tron versus a more normal based Boros Burn list. I say normal because the second half or second set of matches, we were using this build, which uses Deflecting Palm in the main deck as opposed to 2 of the copies of Searing Blaze, and the Searing Blaze has replaced the Searing Bloods. I was part of a debate in the Burn Discord about the merits of Deflecting Palm, and I was going to originally do this all in one video, but I think I'm going to actually separate the 2 videos out. That way, kind of Deflecting Palm, people can kind of judge the merits of it in this kind of a matchup on their own. There was a discussion about Deflecting Palm because of decks like Humans, Hogak, E-Tron, especially Hogak and E-Tron being 2 decks that Burn can use a little bit of extra help in the matchup. My experience, Hogak's been a pretty reasonable matchup for Burn, but, having another main deck answer, quote-unquote, to the 8/8 only helps your matchup a little bit, and then since Searing Blaze is already kind of a dead spot against controlling decks anyway, having a Deflecting Palm, some people have argued that helps shut down the Eldrazi. It helps shut down Hogak, helps you counter race, kind of like another Lightning Helix / Searing Blaze effect in one card. I haven't been a huge fan of the card because it is a bit more of a reactive card, but I'll let everybody else judge on their merits when they see the video for the Deflecting Palm build. But as for this version, I think a couple keynotes in the matchup is being on the play certainly helps. Being able to, I guess we have Lavamancer in this build, we just have another land. So just ignore this Lavamancer, it's not in this build, this was an older build. But one of the big things, obviously, was having your 1-drop creatures, your Swift Spears, your Goblin Guides, and being able to get under their chalices on 1, especially on the play. So play draw is quite important in the matchup. One of their biggest weapons in the matchup is obviously turn 2 on the play, Chalice of the Void on 1, shuts down a good bit of our deck. Even hitting Chalice on 2 at certain points has been kind of critical. And then obviously their ability to hit Thought-Knot Seer on like turn 2, turn 3 with their really good draws. Follow that up with things like Reality Smasher and Endbringer. Also having the ability to have the card package to go get something like Basilisk Collar to help swing the race. Their deck has a lot of tools to beat ours even without Chalice of the Void. And obviously Chalice of the Void shutting down like half of our live top decks obviously hurts. Burn, once again, is consistency over power. The London Mulligan rule helps the less consistent deck, in this case Eldrazi Tron, find their chalices, find their Eldrazi temples, which help to make their deck a lot more consistent. Their deck has tools to beat ours. If we're on the play in the matchup, I think we are even to maybe slightly ahead, but when they're on the play, they're significantly ahead. So I think overall the matchup kind of favors them, at least against the more traditional build of Boros Burn. Our Searing Blazes and Eidolons are both kind of poor cards, but fortunately we have a lot of cards with sideboard plan ends up being, and the build we were running was 3 Path to Exile, 2 Skullcrack, 2 Smash. This path was cut from the latest version of the deck. But we bring in these 7 cards, we end up cutting 4 Searing Blaze and 3 Eidolon. It's kind of almost a clean swap. Path to Exile obviously helps deal with their big bads. Smash is here pretty good against Chalice and against Basilisk Color Plan. And Skullcrack, is another spell. It doesn't interact with our creatures, but it is another 2-drop spell and helps to maybe stem the tide of 1 Basilisk Color hit, enabling us to maybe close out the game over a turn or 2 with just burn spells once we're getting to the point where our creatures are being neutralized by their larger creatures. So interesting matchup. I think we ended up losing 2 of the 3 matches, but as you saw, their good draws usually beat our good draws, unfortunately, but it is very, very play draw dependent. And we do have tools in the matchup to win, especially in the post-board games, but Chalice on 1 is still an annoyance, especially with a deck that can back it up with a lot of pressure. They're not a deck like Mono Red Prison, where it takes forever for their Chalices to be meaningful, and they have to fade like 6, 7, 8 draw steps. They usually have to fade like 2 or 3 with how quickly their deck kind of closes things out. So, anywho, that'll be it for this particular video. I'm going to separate the Deflecting Palm build into a separate video. It'll probably come out, I hope, on Thursday, but this video is probably going to be 25-30 minutes long, so I didn't want to go, kind of make people brain dead to the effect of Deflecting Palm in the matchup. So we're going to kind of do a part 2 with Deflecting Palm and let people judge for themselves whether the card is worthy of the inclusion in the matchup and against things like Hogak and such. As always, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, please consider subscribing, giving us a thumbs up, and leaving a constructive comment down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please consider visiting our Patreon page and our Twitter page. This has been John for MTG Nexus. Everybody have a great day.